And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Today is day one where all of the COVID numbers will no longer be reported to the Center for Disease Control. Nope. In fact, they're going to be reported to a private company with a no-bid contract that will serve under the control of the Trump political apparatus. This is not how you run a country. This is not how you do this stuff. But hey, they got to do something, because I don't know if you're paying attention. Things are not good. The numbers were not good. So here's the thing. When the numbers aren't good, you got to hide them, because clearly they don't have a plan to do anything else. So we're going to have to fudge the numbers. We're going back to the Bush era, and we're going to fudge the numbers. Because California hit a record high today. COVID is back with a vengeance there in California. Texas reported a high day for deaths and for new cases. 110 people died, almost 11,000 new cases today. Florida, their ICU beds are almost gone. The state had passed 300,000 cases of the COVID. You've got the governor of Oklahoma, Republican Kevin Stitt. He has now he announced today that he has tested positive for the virus. And they go, where did he get it? Could it have been that rally in Tulsa where Donald had to have his little charade, where Herman Cain got it? Herman, just so you know, Mr. 999, the former presidential candidate, he's still in an Atlanta hospital. Evidently, they're trying some new course of treatment, which, they're putting on the good face. Oh, things are going really well. When they start a new course of treatment, that means everything that they've done to this point is not working. So will we see the Godfather pizza guy get out of the hospital? I look, for his sake, I kind of hope so. But here is a guy who said, we're not wearing no stinking mask. So now you got Oklahoma governor. He's got it now. We're seeing Wisconsin with high numbers, Nevada, Oklahoma, Alaska. They've doubled their numbers. Alabama, the Republican governor of Alabama today announced a statewide mask order, citing that the state had seen their numbers increase by 50%. We're well over 137,000 dead. We're well over, 3.5 million cases across the country. You've got states all over the place mandating masks. The Montana governor, Steve Bullock, he's issued a mandate for 25 of their 56 counties. And here in the great state of Pennsylvania, where I'm at, we went green in all counties. We went green on July 3rd. We went green. The whole state went green on July 3rd. We're opening up. And limited, they said, look, restaurants can open to, half capacity. You still got a social distance. You still got to do this. We still want you wearing masks in public. Be adults about it. Be grown-ups. Be smart. We haven't. So today, exactly 12 days. We didn't even make it 2 weeks. Didn't even make it 2 weeks. We're pulling back from that. Today, the governor said that all indoor dining would be reduced to 25% capacity. Bars would be open for sit-down meals at tables only. Bar service prohibited. Nobody elbowing up and bellying up to the bars. Telework, if it's possible, to be mandated. And gatherings less than 25 people indoors and less than 250 people outdoors. We now see that corporate America, who is really freaking out, because they were hoping, hey, Americans are smart. We spend, some money on educating them. Maybe they all took a basic science course. Maybe they get it. They're not really happy. And in fact, today, Kroger, the grocery store chain, they have said that anyone entering their stores will be mandated to wear a mask. Walmart has done the same. And when I saw that Walmart starting on the 20th, and I'm going, why wait till the 20th? Why not tomorrow? On the 20th, I'm hoping that the big cable providers give us live feeds into the Walmart stores so the real fun can begin. Because I've often said, Walmart is a reality TV show waiting to happen. This ought to just be great. Because, well, it's Walmart. So the fun should begin. Now, here's the thing. Yesterday, I was going to talk about a story of, a 40-some-year-old guy who stabbed a 77-year-old guy in a Quick Mart. Because the younger guy wasn't wearing a mask. They got in an argument. He stabs the guy. He runs. He takes off. And then the cops end up shooting him dead in the street. And my mind is going, what the hell is wrong with this country? How hard is it? How difficult is it? I know, we're Americans. We do what we want. We're Americans. We've got rights, damn it. Oh, my God. I mean, if it weren't so deadly and so dangerous, it truly would be laughable. You couldn't make up a reality show as bad as things have been. And I could go on with all of the numbers that are out there and all of the new deaths and all the new cases. There's so much written on this. But yet you go out and you still see. In fact, we had a delivery guy come to the house today. Wasn't even supposed to be coming to our house. He walks right up, no mask on. He clearly not concerned. And you just go, you're in probably one of the most dangerous jobs. You're interacting with people all the time. And I guess, there's that fatalist mentality. Oh, well, if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it, which I completely understand. And because, look, I am a fatalist. I'm one of those people who go, look, if it's my time, it's my time. Now, the difference is, and this is what I've explained to my kids because they've thrown this up to me. I'm not the kind of fatalist who, when someone is shooting at me, I stand up and say, over here. I'll duck. I'll get out of the way. Kind of just a thought. So in this moment, I wear the mask when I go into the stores. When I deal with people, I put the mask on. You have, like a 65% chance of not getting it. If both of you are wearing it, the chances are even better. Doesn't that seem just a little sane and rational? I guess it does, at least in my view. But the good thing is I think the American public we're waking up to the fact that Trump has no plan in this and that he has boogered this up every step of the way. He's literally done. I can't look to one thing and go, yeah, he did that right. Everything was too little, too late. As my grandmother would always say, a day late and a dollar short. This is where we are. Which is, not surprising that the lead that Biden now enjoys in the polls over Trump is even wider than it was last week. The most recent poll up to 15%. The gap between Biden and Trump. And the thing that I find interesting is, Trump, the ever optimist. He's still out there. Yesterday he said, I think by election day you're going to see some incredible numbers. And immediately my mind went to, well, I'm seeing some incredible numbers right now. 137,000 people are dead. Is it going to be 300,000, 400,000 by November? Is that what you mean by incredible numbers? We've got what is it? 40 million people unemployed. Is it going to be more than that? I mean, we've got millions of people out of work. Is it the 5.5 million people who lost their health insurance? Are we going to get to 10? I mean, what incredible numbers are you talking about? The increase in people needing food stamps, is that what we're talking about? The massive ballooning of our national debt, is that what we're talking about? Because I'm kind of not sure what wonderful numbers I'm supposed to be looking for. Now, here's the I guess there's a positive in this. There could, I was thinking this today. Walter Mondale popped into my head. And then Alfred Landon popped into my head. You go, who the hell is Alfred Landon? Alfred Landon was the guy he was the Republican who ran against FDR in 1936 and took the worst electoral beating in the history of the country. There has never been a bigger landslide than the 36 election. Roosevelt won 98.5% of the electoral college, and the vote was just completely in different worlds. But Landon was like the sacrificial lamb. They threw him out there. But he did get 8 electoral votes. He got 8. Still less than Walter Mondale's 13, because his defeat was the second worst in history, with Reagan getting 97.6% of the electoral vote. There's part of me that goes, this could be, quite possibly, where Trump is in Georgia right now trying to hold on to what is now considered a battleground state. There's actually a possibility of a Democratic senator from Alabama remaining in the Senate, Doug Jones. This could be the first 100% election, because clearly he has no clue of what they're doing. And, I'm not happy about being in the position we're in. And I go back to Inauguration Day saying that this was going to be the worst presidency in the history of the country. There was going to be a massive recession at the end of it. We were going to be in really bad financial shape. Our debt was going to go. Made all of these horrible predictions. And I, at the time, on January 20th, 2017, I made these horrible predictions based on how far my mind could go. It seems that my understanding and my capability of thinking the horrible has limits, because I was nowhere close to where we are right now. And look, nobody could have imagined that we would be locked in our homes for months. No one could have possibly imagined that a global pandemic would have gripped this country and been as just devastating as it's been, not just to our economy, but to our families and to our society, where we're literally killing each other in a freaking dairy mart or whatever it was, where people are literally shooting security guards in the head because the security guard told the little girl to put on a mask. We're literally killing each other over a mask. It's simply, oh my gosh. And you've got a political party in this country who's just insane. The Republicans are just crazy and hell-bent on their little tiny wins. Their little "will show yous." And one of the big ones, Vice President Mike Pence today said that they're considering moving the big Republican convention outdoors. Here's a great idea. August in Florida, outside, with a bunch of, stale, male, and pale white guys. Yeah, that's going to go over really, really well. And I'm all in favor of it. Let them go outside. Let them have their shindigs without their masks on. Let them yell and carry on and infect themselves. And maybe, I had someone say, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is how we get rid of a whole generation of old people and save Social Security, which I'm going, wow, you really said that? Maybe this is how you get rid of, the rest of the herd. Maybe this is how you get rid of some of those people who are not smart enough to stay the hell home. But they claim they're going to go outside. They're going to have their little shindig outside. Jeez. Could you have imagined it would have been this bad? When you think back, I know some people like to say that, yeah, I knew it was going to be bad. Not this bad. And I'll say it. I'll be quite honest. I got the tapes. I said it was going to be horrible. Biggest kleptocracy in the history of the country. We would be in a recession, unquestioningly, in my mind. The debt would go skyrocketing. The deficits would continue. We were going to give the baby the bathwater to the spigot, everything. We were going to give everything to the very wealthy, which we have done. And look, during this pandemic, they are thrilled because they are lining their pockets while, well, a lot of people over the summer, trouble is on the horizon. But I got a lot to get to, lots to talk about. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Ben Jackson's going to be here to share some thoughts on the guns. Yes, the guns. We haven't talked about guns in a while. Evidently, gun sales up, so the gun people are happy. But I got an interview pitch on an interesting topic that I completely forgot about. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that. Quick break. Right back with Ben Jackson. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day 500,000 steelworkers walked off the job in a historic 116-day strike in defense of work rules. It was the largest industry-wide strike. It was also the last. The strike affected 12 steel companies and shut down more than 85% of steel production. Mill owners refused to grant wage increases unless the union agreed to changes in the contract. Specifically, they were looking to eliminate Section 2B, titled Local Working Conditions. The bosses wanted the ability to change the number of workers assigned to any given task. They also wanted to introduce new machinery and rules that would reduce labor hours and cut the workforce. United Steelworker members understood this as an assault on workplace safety and a move to break the union. Mill bosses hoped that a long strike would provoke the membership to abandon their union. But according to Jack Metzger, author of Striking Steel, members had grown used to walkouts every 3 years and planned accordingly. As well, the United Steelworkers had a well-oiled machinery, including an internal welfare system for hardship cases, and also reached out to merchants, banks, charitable agencies, and local and state governments to organize relief. By the end of August, the Department of Defense stoked anxieties that national security was at risk. 3 months into the strike, union funds dwindled and strikers felt the pinch. President Eisenhower invoked a Taft-Hartley injunction, hoping to force strikers back to work. As the union rose to challenge Taft-Hartley's constitutionality, solidarity among the mill owners crumbled. Kaiser Steel broke ranks and settled separately. Their contract granted wage increases and preserved Section 2B, which set the precedent for the contract that was eventually signed industry-wide.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, an advisor to Kanye West has said he is no longer going to be running for president. Evidently, the phrase was, he's out. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't actually know Kanye was anywhere actually close to in. I must have missed it. I know there was some scuttle around, hey, Kanye West is going to win. He's going to be president. You got to get on a ballot. You need to have some infrastructure. You need to do. I know. We like to all think that it's easy. You do need to actually do something other than just say, "Hey, I'm going to run for president." Yeah. Wow. There it is. But hey, he's got a new album coming out, so there is that. Anyway, I got this really interesting guest pitch today that made me think, wow, we haven't talked about guns in a long time. And they were pitching a guest to talk about school violence and how to protect your children from gun violence while at school. And I'm going, wow, this is interesting because nobody's going back to school as far as I know. But here to share some thoughts on the gun issue, I've asked our good friend Ben Jackson to come talk with us. Ben is what I call a gun sanity activist. One of our favorite Twitter folks, with Dad of the Decade. Ben, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, I'm always glad to be here. Thanks so much.
So I get this guest pitch today, and it's a long, bunch of questions, bunch of answers, all that, and they're talking about gun violence, and I got in school, and I got to tell you, I'd completely forgotten about it.
Yeah, it's a really, really sad thing that the thing that it took to shut down school shootings was literally shutting down every school in the country, right? Like that's what we needed to do to tackle gun violence in schools. Now, I will say, as things have been reopening, gun violence is exploding around the country, and I don't see any reason why that would not continue if people follow this, what seems like ridiculous demand of the Trump regime to open schools in the fall.
Yeah.
Right? That it seems like, we've overloaded on guns and we've overloaded on violence, and when we put kids in schools, too many of them get shot. It's so we haven't talked an awful lot about gun violence in schools this year, but that's because kids haven't been in school.
Right. No, it's an excellent point. But it was one of those things, Ben, where I was, I'm reading through it and I'm going, wow, honestly, this is one of those things completely fell off my radar.
Yeah.
And yet I know that, gun sales are way up, not to the where they were during the Obama years, but they're jumping way up because people are facing pretty great uncertainty, and there's real fear out there. And I have this worry that with more armed people, we end up seeing more of the kind of insanity like we see in dollar stores or in convenience stores, where people killing each other over wearing a damn mask.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that happen already. That type of killing is already happening. And, we actually are seeing more gun purchases than ever before, even including in the Obama administration. Right now we're
Really?
seeing, record numbers of gun sales and background checks are happening right now. June was 136% over June of last year. We're seeing this just over and over and over again all year. And to the idea that right now we may have seen, you remember the United States is a country that has over 300 million guns. There are more guns than people in the country. And we've seen maybe in just the first half of this year a 4% increase in the guns that have been purchased in that 330 million. That's how big that number is. And half of those are people who are buying guns for the first time. And that's a little bit what's scary about it, is that you have people who are home, who are scared, who are in a really, really tense political environment and in a tense social environment, who have guns that they've never had before.
Right.
And it's just a recipe for really, really bad things to happen. And, we've seen that. We've seen, and this, happened to be a stabbing yesterday where an officer ended up shooting and killing a person who had stabbed somebody, an employee of a store, because they didn't want to wear a mask. And we've all seen these videos of people, frankly, behaving in dangerous manners in response to being asked to wear masks. When you couple that with people who are able to have guns and are able to carry them basically everywhere, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, Walmart has now said that on July 20th they're going to mandate people wearing masks. And I, flippantly, I said, maybe we need to put a camera in there. We can watch live, reality TV, because let the games begin, because, well, Walmart's the place where a lot of insanity happens. And now this, are you going to have instead of, the door greeter, a door bouncer with, heavily armed bouncer?
Sure. And it's scary, right? Like, that is one of the most underpaid jobs in the country, for a company that works like crazy to bust unions and to keep unions from happening in their stores, so that those people don't get paid. You're asking them to stand in front of a door when they have basically no choice but to go to work. That's where their insurance is. That these are low-paying jobs that in the event that people were able to get unemployment, if they didn't have them, it would not be an awful lot of money.
And most of them are older.
Most of them are older, right?
Which, they've got a whole bunch of underlying problems to begin with. So not only, is it a dangerous job, you're putting them right out in front during a global pandemic. So, hey, good on you for that.
Right. And, there's absolutely, there's a need for people to be wearing masks. I just can't get into the heads of people who say, I'm not going to wear a mask because it impedes my freedom. Because they're still going to Walmart, right? Like, they can still get into their Walmart with their mask. They can still do these things. And the reactions to it are so violent, right? It's not a protest. It is a confrontation that they are seeking out every single time. And, that alone is dangerous. And then when you put guns into that mixture, it is a mess.
And the thing is those people are generally the people who have the guns to begin with.
Correct.
So this is like a really, in my view, a really deadly cocktail, because you've got the angry people now getting even angrier, and have been told, and they've internalized that someone's taking something from them and they're defending something. Yeah, I'm expecting a lot more craziness as more states go back to this, because look, we boogered this up, and we boogered it up badly, because we were almost there, and I've been saying this for a while. We almost could have had this whipped if we just stayed at home a little longer.
Right.
Had we just played the couch potato Olympics a little bit longer, this wouldn't have happened. But what has happened was extremely predictable, and sadly, it was predicted.
It was predicted. And we see the governor of Oklahoma now, who was at the little Trump yard party in Tulsa the other day, or the other week, has now tested positive for COVID, right? Like, these are things we knew were going to happen. We said were going to happen. And the only thing we had to do to not have them happen was stay home.
Right.
Right? The only thing we had to do was nothing. And we didn't. And we are now the worst in the world at that. It's bad for our standing on the world stage, and it's deadly for people here at home.
It's just plain crazy, and the thing that gets me is, especially on the gun front, you just see this real craziness. And what was it, St. Louis, where the pink shirted guy and his wife were out on the lawn, pointing guns at people. You go, is that going to happen more often? I mean, how? Because the weird thing is, these people, they truly believed that everyone was coming for them.
Right. And just as an aside, people often, when they're talking about the need for an armed populace, they'll say guns are used defensively, right? And that use, that couple coming out unnecessarily into their yard with these guns, and pointing them at each other in the same time when they were doing this, just doing it poorly. But those would be reported as defensive uses, and clearly that was not a defensive use of the gun. It was an intimidation, right? It was not any, and it's sort of core to a lot of what people do with guns. Now, if those people didn't have guns in their home, you know what they would have done? They would have stayed in their living room, and the entire protest would have walked past their house, and it would have not been a thing. But because they had guns, they felt empowered to come out and start that confrontation. And that's the same thing you saw in Michigan when the armed people stormed and took over the State House for a while. You saw this in a rally in Ohio where somebody started a rumor in a small town saying Antifa was going to be coming to this Black Lives Matter rally, and hundreds and hundreds of people, generally armed, showed up to confront Black Lives Matter. Yeah. These people that have guns then feel empowered to use them in stupid ways very often.
No, that happened here in Pennsylvania, just down the road from us in Gettysburg. You had, the same kind of thing that, somehow on social media it got out that Antifa was going to come and they were going to burn flags, on the graves of the soldiers who were buried at Gettysburg there. And you had a bunch of the motorcycle guys with guns, and they all showed up, and they were going to, and the one guy's quote was just priceless. He said he was there to defend the graves of both the Union and the Confederate soldiers, without actually knowing that there are no Confederate soldiers buried in that cemetery.
Right.
And by carrying that flag, that Confederate battle flag, over the graves of those Union soldiers, that is desecrating that land, in my view.
It totally is. It absolutely is. It would be like carrying, a Nazi German flag over the beaches of Normandy, right? Like where there are so many of these Allied folks killed. I don't understand the mindset of intentionally looking for a provocation that will lead to a physical conflict, and that is specifically what these people are doing when they show up with their guns. They don't show up with their guns hoping they won't need to use them.
No.
None of those people are showing up like, hey, I just want to hang out with my gun and my friends and, go for a drink and have a chat, and scare some protesters, right? In each of those minds, there is a fantasy of shooting somebody, and that's what scares me.
And that's, and since you bring that up, it reminded me of when I first moved to Pennsylvania. I started a job, within a couple of weeks of moving to this state, and it was like culture shock for me because I had always grown up in a city. If you saw somebody with a gun in the city, you ducked because someone was going to get shot. At least in the neighborhood I grew up in.
Yeah.
But these guys I was working with, they were, they had gun racks in their trucks, and it was very much a gun culture. And I remember a guy in the lunchroom telling this story in the most pornographic way possible about how he got this new gun and he couldn't wait to pull it out, and he hopes somebody breaks into his house, and just all of this fantasy play, this Rambo kind of mentality that I just looked at him. I said, you're the last person who should be allowed to have a gun. And this was, going back 25 years ago.
Right.
But, this has been, around a long time. It just seems like it's getting worse.
Well, it is getting worse, and it's getting worse because we have so many more guns than we had. Even when we think back to the 90s, there might have been 150 million guns. We have, in that 20 years, doubled the number of guns, more than doubled the number of guns in the country, and they're going up exponentially. And, the more guns that we have, the more shootings that we're going to have. I mean, it's just math. And it's just an honest, look at who we've become as a culture, that places where there are more guns, more people get shot.
So let me ask you this, because, you're right. There are more people with guns, and more new people are buying guns because they're worried about the people who've had guns. Isn't this a scenario where we're heading? I mean, it's terminal velocity down, free falling down the slippery slope at this point. But, isn't this the argument for I better get a gun to protect myself from all these crazy people who have guns?
Well, if you went to a doctor and they said, Rick, you've got cancer, and the treatment is you should go and get more cancer, you're going to think they sound crazy, right? And that's what that idea is that, we need guns to protect us from guns, and the fact of the matter is that's not what happens with guns, is that when you have a gun in your home, it's more likely to be used against you than you used it against somebody trying to hurt you. It's more likely that somebody in your family is going to use it on themselves or on another member of your family. And not having that gun does not make you more likely to get robbed or shot or stabbed or have your home invaded or any of those things, right? Having that gun does not reduce your ability, the reality of those things happening. And so that argument, the argument of...
But Ben, the only way you stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Yeah, well, we've seen that play out, and how has that worked out so far? Because, if that argument were true, in a country where we have more guns than people, why is there any violent crime? Right? And there is. There's violent crime, there's murder, people are being shot to death all of the time. And it's because guns don't make us safer. If guns made us safer, these things wouldn't happen.
Yeah, we've got some real problems, and it's not getting any better anytime soon, which, again, is why I think November so important, hoping for a landslide, hoping Trump gets ousted out of the White House, and maybe we solve some of these problems. But, Ben, I appreciate the time. Good conversation. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Thanks, Rick. Take care.
Our good friend Ben Jackson. Like I said, he's one of the gun sanity activists that I think he's actually got it. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that Ralph Gray was attacked for trying to organize black farmers. Gray was born to a large African-American family in Alabama. Living in the Jim Crow South, he became a tenant farmer. He joined the Communist Party. At the time, communist labor organizers were often more open to black membership and leadership then were other white-dominated labor organizations. Along with his brother Tommy, Ralph helped to found the Croppers and Farm Workers Union in Tallapoosa County, Alabama. They set to work organizing black sharecroppers. Then, several of the local landlords stopped providing food and money to their workers. They did this in an effort to force the black workers to labor on building a new sawmill. Angry sharecroppers joined the new union in protest. The union demanded more autonomy for the tenant farmers. They also demanded a longer school day and a public school bus for their children. Alarmed by this organizing, the sheriff, Kyle Young, led a posse to break up a union meeting. They beat and terrorized the union members. The vigilantes then went to Tommy Gray's house, where they fractured his wife's skull. Ralph Gray chased them off with a shotgun. But the next night, on July 16th, the union met again. Gray and others armed themselves to protect the meeting. Gunfire was exchanged. The sheriff shot Ralph Gray while he lay on the ground, already wounded. The mob of vigilantes then burned Gray's house to the ground. They placed Gray's mutilated corpse on the courthouse steps as a warning to any others who dare to stand up for the rights of black workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, evidently, I guess MS-13's back. I guess we're going to be taking over cities. I guess MS-13's back. I guess Antifa is taking a back seat for a little time, and now it's MS-13 again. And Trump's gonna. Look, I guess you've got to scare people into thinking that he's the only one who's going to be able to keep you safe from the others. And this is what the protests have given him an opportunity to do, to now say, oh, look at all this crime. Look at all, we're going to be the long arm of justice. And we're going to go after all of these entities. Now they claim they're going to go and they're going to break up all of the MS-13 leadership and all of that. And, yeah, I mean, it's weird because I've had listeners tell me that they believe that MS-13s are on every corner, all because we've got Donald Trump saying we got MS-13 around every corner. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on today's revelation. I've asked Jared Yates Sexton to come talk with us. He's an author, political analyst, and host of the Muckrake podcast. His book, America Rule: How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
How's it going, Rick?
It is not good. I mean, we're in a really weird time. I don't know if you saw Trump's press conference today, where evidently we're gonna start busting up MS-13.
Well, I mean, we're living in a country where the terror just never ends, and fortunately, we've got this incompetent buffoon who is just going to be our defender at every turn, but somehow or another just is incapable of busting anybody or really going after anybody at any time. So I don't know about you. I don't feel a whole lot safer tonight, for sure.
No, I don't. And the thing is, but some people are going to listen to this, and some people are going to be like, hey, Donald Trump's going to take over those cities. And, it's going to be those minority cities, those high poverty area cities where we're going to, and I don't know how he's going to do this. He's going to march federal troops in. I'm not quite sure what his plan is. But I got people telling me, hey, at least he's trying.
Yeah, I've got a lot of people back home and people that I love who think that not only that the Black Lives Matter protests are still, going strong every single night, but that the riots are still happening and buildings are being burned down. The misinformation and the propaganda that Trump and his supporters have been spreading, the idea that America is like an anarchist state at this point and people are getting murdered left and right. I mean, it's all there to make these people frightened. And you know as well as I do, Trump blusters all the time, threatens to send troops here, send troops there. He's a total coward. But the question is, how desperate will he get? And eventually, what will that desperation turn into?
No, it's crazy times. And then really what it is, it's all the distraction to suck the air out of the room for what's really going on, and it's his ineptness and his ineptitude on how he's dealt with this pandemic. And the fact of the matter is he still doesn't have a plan. I mean, yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday he complained that Biden and Obama stopped their testing, and I'm going, but hold on, didn't this happen in 2019? Did I miss something? Was Obama and Biden president and vice president in 19?
Man, it's so hard to keep track of anymore, isn't it? I mean, when you really look at it, though, and this is the frightening thing, it's not only that he doesn't have a plan, it's that they're not interested in having any sort of plan. I mean, on one hand, we're talking about American cities burning or gangs roving around, whatever, these fake terrorist threats. And meanwhile, we have a generational plague that is just tearing this country asunder. And they're not even interested in talking about it. I mean, we're a couple of weeks out from this administration throwing God knows how many of America's kids into the maw of this pandemic with absolutely no plan, no resources, and no backup. I mean, that's really horrific.
No, I mean, the fact that, Betsy DeVos and this administration are pushing to send kids back into schools, and you got someone like Mike Pence saying, you deciders in your local districts, you shouldn't take what the CDC has to say in making your decision, is just, it's literally insane to me. But again, as we know, it's not surprising. It's what this administration has always been.
Yeah, and this is something I've been trying to tell people about and trying to warn people about. Everyone keeps treating this like it's a normal presidential administration. It's an anti-presidential administration. Every single secretary and every single department that they're over, they want to destroy it. They want to literally dismantle the federal government as the ability to do well by the people. And you know as well as I do that Betsy DeVos has systematically attacked public education one time after another, trying to move towards, private education and tax funding of Christian academies, resegregated academies. And they look at this thing and they have no plan because they have no interest in helping anyone. They have no interest in actually lending a hand to public education because they literally want to destroy it.
But the weird thing is, Jared, is, I've had a number of Trump supporters or people who claim they voted for Trump and they're independents tell me that they believe that this administration has done more to help minorities and more to help working class people than any administration in the history of our country. And I'm I want to believe that they're thoughtful. I want to believe that what they're writing, they truly have thought out and have internalized. I just don't know where the hell they're getting it from.
Well, unfortunately, from the research that I've done, it's coming from the same places of these, QAnon conspiracy cults who want to believe that John F. Kennedy Jr. is still alive and that Trump's son is a time-traveling detective. I mean, they have spun such a toxic, poisonous alternate reality that facts and objective reality just simply don't enter into it. I mean, we've watched this happen for the past couple of decades with Fox News and developing right-wing media, where they create this alternate reality where Republicans can still win elections even though they don't actually do anything for the American people besides redistribute their wealth to the top. And a lot of these people are caught in these alternate realities, and I don't think that they understand that, they're drowning in not just conspiracy theories, but just straight misinformation.
But it's, it's what they've been sold for so long. I mean, this, I don't know if you read Bruce Bartlett's piece the other day. He was basically talking about white supremacy in the Republican Party and how the Republican Party has been the party of know-nothings for some time, and they've always used the attacks on smart people and on education and on knowledge. They've always used that to rile their base up, and it's now who the party is. Whereas in the past years, like Reagan and Eisenhower and Nixon would use the useful idiots, but still put smart people in charge of policy. This is like the first administration where you really have people who truly believe Trump is the savior, and they're getting screwed by him every day and saying thank you.
They absolutely are. And this is very much a result of recent history where Fox News not only indoctrinated people, but actually ended up creating, this AstroTurf Patriot Tea Party movement that was all based on propaganda and paranoia and, quite frankly, conspiracy theories that have been left over from everything from the John Birch Society to the Red Scare. And, they created this bizarre movement within the Republican Party that not only trafficked in these conspiracy theories, but actually started believing it. So I've been trying to tell everyone who will listen that this was a long time coming. Obviously Donald Trump is a symptom. He's not the disease. And what we see with the Republican Party is a group that is absolutely drowning in conspiracy theories, misinformation, and absolutely has no attachment whatsoever to reality that resembles any reality that I think any of the rest of us can even recognize. But
No.
it's totally infected, and it's a really sad thing to watch.
No, you're right. And I talk about, I'm sure you remember Pat Buchanan when he ran back in '92, and him being the fringe, the white supremacist nationalist fringe of the party, and he was roundly voted right out of the way. His part, that little wing, now dominates the Republican Party, and I don't know how you bring that back. Because look, I know some Republican voters who are decent people. I don't doubt that they love the country, and I don't doubt that they believe in equality and fairness and justice and all the things that we like to talk about and say we believe in. I don't doubt that they believe this, but they're voting for people who don't.
Yeah, I try and explain this to people. When I was covering the Trump rallies in 2016, there were two tiers of Trump supporters. There were the traditional Republicans who wore elephant brooch pins and, worked your county fair at the voting booth, right? And they were up in the stands, and they weren't really dealing with Trump that much outside of their regular sort of, Republican patronage. And then there were the people down in front of the stage who were talking about murdering people and fascism and just blatant racism. And the party has been taken over by that group. And I'll be frank with you, I'm very open about this. I think the Republican Party needs to go away. There's room for people to argue for conservatism, and maybe something can be birthed from the ashes of this just totally wrecked party. But they have no actual ideology. They're not actually fiscally conservative. They're not socially conservative. They're not pro-life. They're not pro-troops. All of the things that we used to think about the Republican Party are gone. And the only thing that remains is a group that is obsessed with consolidating power and expediting profit. That's the only thing they care about, and the principles change constantly. So personally, and I've been talking with a lot of people who agree with me, the party needs to go away and lead to something else, something that is actually real.
Yeah. And look, they use, the divisions that they can find to make sure that they can continue to make their profit. Because ultimately, and I said this about Trump from the beginning, I don't know whether he's a racist or a nationalist or any of that stuff. I know he's a con man. I know he's going to line his pockets. And if he can use white nationalists, or if he can use race divisions to line his pockets, he's most certainly going to do that. And that's why I think right now is an interesting time in our country, because we do need to figure out how to heal these divides. We do need to figure out how to unite the country against this kind of internal division, because not only is it tearing us apart internally, externally, outside of the country, it's being used to rip us apart even further.
Well, the strange thing about all of this is, for all of Trump's bizarre rantings and racist drivel, we keep losing sight of certain things. Like, for instance, China just signed a major agreement with Iran, which, that was made completely possible by Donald Trump's saber rattling with Iran. And, of course, his brinksmanship with China. And that's something that we don't really pay attention to, because there's a carnival barker who is in constant conversation with right-wing media, who is obviously a white supremacist. Maybe he doesn't believe he is, and maybe he just thinks he's a realist. But we have a real problem in this country in that somebody like this is not only existing, but is, has come to power. I mean, no country that is healthy and sane would elect this person. It says something more about our political environment than it does necessarily about him. And I think that we need to take a look at that. And this pandemic, particularly, and the damage that he's caused during it, I mean, this is a time for reflection. It's time to really look in the mirror and figure out who we are and who we should be, because we have been led astray in just an amazing way.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And to me, this is the moment that you want, someone to step forward, another FDR figure, in that mindset that we're going to make radical changes. And I don't know that Joe Biden's the guy, but I got to tell you, I liked his manufacturing plan. I like some of that. I like the $2 trillion of investment in infrastructure and green economy and doing that stuff. I like some of that stuff. I think we should be doing more. but it's a start, I guess, right?
Well, I was talking about this the other day on our podcast, The Muckrake. I think the ceiling for a Joe Biden presidency is LBJ. It's a person who knows how to make things happen in the government, and who, when they took office, you might not have thought of them being somebody who would sign civil rights legislation or really move the country further left, but it's a person who met the moment where it was. So I think that's sort of the ceiling of a Biden presidency, and if we get there, that's tremendous. But I would also really, really enjoy if, the Democratic Party and the left in this country, and particularly organized labor and groups like that with Solidarity, could pull him left, and maybe we could see a renaissance of actual progressive thought in this country.
No, but that's what happened with FDR. I mean, there's always the famous quote of him and Frances Perkins. Her wanting to do something, and him saying, well, get people out in the streets and make me do it. This is the kind of thing that I keep saying we need to, once he's elected, once he takes office, it isn't game over, go home and go back to life. That's when the real work starts of doing more organizing and pushing and demanding and pushing for better policy and things that are going to actually make people's lives better.
You're a student of labor in this country, and you have to know that there are times in America where people forget that they have power. They feel powerless. They feel like politics happens beyond them. And these are the times where the wealthy and powerful elite take control for themselves. And it starts to feel, again, like this powerlessness will never end. Well, guess what? During this pandemic, it has become very clear that the federal government has no interest whatsoever in helping people, and people are having to actually recognize that they have to organize with each other, that you can actually do things from a grassroots, bottom-up perspective, which I think is the complete change of perspective that this country needs. We need to remember that we can do things for ourselves, and that politics and power stem from bottom up. It should not be top down the way that it has been since Ronald Reagan.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's something that I've talked about for a very long time. When the labor movement went, kind of astray was when you got into this business unionism mentality where the union will take care of things for you. Just go to your steward and they'll take care of it, instead of saying, no, we're going to take care of it ourselves, and our union's going to help us do it. And I'm hoping that, with this next generation, I'm hoping that they internalize that and, re-engage with the idea of solidarity and the concept of an injury to one being an injury to all, and making sure that we all do better.
Well, during this tragedy of the pandemic, I know for me and the people around me and the people I know, we've come to rely on each other more. And it's one of those things, and you know this as well, that in the pursuit of profit and power, you lose sight of those important things. You lose sight of who you are and the people around you and what they mean to you. And I think that this is a good reset. I think this is a time and a place where we need to stop thinking about that pursuit of profit and power and start remembering who we are and what the people around us mean to us. And once we start doing that and we start realizing that organizing and solidarity lead to power, I think all bets are off. And I think this might be one of those moments where the pendulum swings from powerlessness to Americans remembering again that they have power.
For me, I always hope this every time you see, uprisings or, the angry masses saying we've had enough. The Tea Party moment for me was one of those moments where at the very beginning I was telling my labor friends, make sure you get as many people as you can to those meetings, because that's a grassroots beginning of an uprising. Get labor's message in that, because they're with you. Then obviously the moneyed interest took it over and perverted it into what it became. But there was real anger, and that real anger could have been used to move us in a positive direction instead of in a negative direction. And I'm hoping that the anger that comes out of this pandemic and all the things that are happening now are going to move us in a positive direction as opposed to a negative one.
Yeah, and I mean, look what's happened. I mean, some of the results that have happened, particularly from the Black Lives Matter protest, are just simply miraculous. I mean, what is it? It's like 72% of Americans now believe in systemic prejudice and racism. I mean, for 71 to 72% of anyone in this country to agree on anything is a miracle.
Right.
And all it takes is for people to get out in the streets and to take power in their own hands, because when that happens, the media has to report on it and the national conversation changes. And quite frankly, Donald Trump is so actually untalented and undisciplined that in the face of somebody like him, like, you can gain power. You can start to turn the tables because these people are inarticulate and they are not careful. They are not actually talented at what they're doing. So the moment you get out in the streets and you start, again, organizing and engaging in solidarity, things can happen. And I think people need to realize that again.
Yeah, and to highlight that point, today the story came out that yesterday in Asheville, North Carolina, the Asheville City Council there voted 7-0 on a resolution that would formally apologize to its black residents over slavery and discriminatory housing program practices and racist policing and all of that stuff. And they, it doesn't, and they talked about reparations, not direct payments, individual checks, but actually investing in communities and creating a community reparations commission to make those investments in those areas, better schools, better, parks and recreation things and opportunities that aren't there and haven't been there.
Yeah, and look at the truth of this, and this is something else that American history has taught us, and I didn't actually know this until I was writing American Rule, but racism and that division in terms of race has always been used to divide people and keep them from joining together.
Yep.
Those are cudgels that have created cleavages between groups and organizations and cultures, and it has been this constant usage by white supremacists and wealthy people to keep people from organizing. And the moment that you start actually dealing with this prejudice and racism and these divides is the moment that you can actually come together and you can change things.
To highlight the point, back in 2015, we did a civil rights tour. We traveled the southern U.S. To talk about labor's involvement in the civil rights movement, and we ended up at a plantation in Durham, North Carolina. Historic Stagville is what it was called, and the people there gave me a wonderful tour. Had great conversations with the people who run the place. I highly suggest going there. But she took us to where the living quarters were. And, she was very proud of the slave living quarters because she said, look at how well built these are. Look at the structures that, the slaves were given. And now look over there on the other side of the fence where the white people lived and you had these ramshacks that were all falling down. She goes, but those people still thought that they were better off. And the division that they had, and this woman was, her argument was, the slaves were treated much better than those whites on the other side of the fence, but the white people, still thought that they were better. And that division kept them poor and the slaves enslaved. And it was a horrible situation that the wealthy used against both sides.
Well, and I'll tell you the craziest thing. Again, when I was doing research on this book, American Rule, I thought I knew everything that I needed to know about the Confederacy and the South in that time period. But I'll tell you, the wealthy planters and all of the aristocrats in the South during the Confederacy, they talked openly about how they used racism and slavery to keep poor white people under their thumb.
Yep.
This has been the plan from the very beginning of this country, and it has worked like a charm over and over and over again to keep African Americans suppressed and also to keep poor white people suppressed. And once you start to realize that prejudice is a weapon, it's a cudgel, it's something to create cleavages between cultures, and once you can start actually talking about those things, all of a sudden you can make a point to people, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, the ones who, can we bring back some of these Trump supporters? Can we bring back some of the members of the cult of Trump? Well, all they need to understand about racism and prejudice is they have more money to make, they have more power to have if they can simply reject prejudice and racism. It's one of the things that keeps them down as well. And when you find solidarity and you find common ground, that's when you all gain.
No, and I have people ask me why I care about the Black Lives Matter protests or any of that, and I say, look, our history, labor's history, is riddled with the division between black and white workers, between white and Chinese workers. We've been sliced and diced and pitted against one another, and we all lose. And until we can figure out how we no longer allow ourselves to be divided, that's the moment when we would be able to, maybe do a little bit better, and everybody would do better. And I think that's a good thing.
Rick, maybe I'm feeling a little homesick tonight, but I'm thinking a lot. I'm from the Wabash Valley in Indiana, and I was raised up on the words of Eugene V. Debs, and the idea that anytime that someone is in jail, I am in jail, and that idea of a better, more progressive, solidarity type society, That's what I think we should be moving towards. This idea that just because something is happening to a person of a different race or a different gender or a different belief system, it doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. And once we can reach that place of solidarity, which honestly is not just anti-racist, it's anti-Trumpist, it's anti-fascist.
Yep.
And once we can reach that point, we all gain from it. And we need to keep our eye on the ball of that, which is when all of us win, we all win. That's just the way we have to look at it.
Back to the old Knights of Labor's, an injury to one being an injury to all. But Jared, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Thanks so much. Good stuff as always. Appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
All right. Take care, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Gerald D.H. Sexton. Make sure you check out his podcast, the Muckrake Podcast. Also his book, America Rule, How a Nation Conquered the World but Failed Its People. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
6 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, the disease is presently raging anew because corporate-serving public officials rush to open the economy, causing more infections and deaths. So gosh, what to do now? Of course, let's take away the health care coverage of some 23 million Americans. Backed by Trump and company, that's the brilliant health care priority being pushed by top Republican officials in 18 states. Led by Greg Abbott, the mangy governor of Texas, these GOP-controlled states have chosen, in this time of national health crisis, to run to the Supreme Court asking its Republican majority to strike down Obamacare. If they get their way, millions of families would lose their health coverage, and insurance giants, which are major campaign donors to Abbott and other GOP officials who are pushing the court action, would again be able to restrict coverage that millions of others now have. It's perverse that any other governor would follow Abbott's lead, for he presides over a healthcare disaster in Texas. It has America's highest number of uninsured people, including a record number of unprotected children. Killing Obamacare would add another million Texans to the 18% who are already uncovered, plus it would then not be there for some 3 million other Texans expected to lose their job-based insurance policies in today's growing pandemic recession. The healthcare nightmare pushed by the Texas governor has been called moral insanity. So naturally, Donald Trump rushed to embrace it. He recently directed his Attorney General to back Abbott's effort to pressure the High Court to scrap Obamacare. This is Jim Hightower saying, however, this political maneuver is so unpopular, especially today, that there was no trumpeting of the legal filing by the White House. Instead, it was tiptoed over to the court at 10:30 on a Thursday night, hoping you and I wouldn't notice.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as often as we talk about education here on the program, especially now that you've got billionaire Betsy DeVos and the Trump administration trying to force districts to reopen and, well, put our kids in danger, it's nice to know that there are people out there who are fighting for our kids, fighting for public education. And, recently, our friends with the Badass Teachers Association, they celebrated their 7th anniversary birthday. Which would it be, anniversary or birthday? Or both? But 7 years, and we've been having them on the program here pretty much that entire time. And I guess, the 7th anniversary, just in time for the end of education as we know it. Anyway, here to talk about the 7 years that they've been active. I've asked Melissa Tomlinson to come talk with us. She's executive director of the Great Badass Teachers Association. Melissa, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me. And it's not going to be the end of public education if we can help it.
If we can help it. But I'm looking around. I'm going, it could be the end of childhood. I mean, isn't it insane that we have an administration, a vice president, saying that you shouldn't take the CDC guidelines into account when you're considering reopening your schools? You shouldn't listen to smart people. You shouldn't listen to the scientists, to the schools that are supposed to be teaching the next generation of scientists.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely not in a good situation right now when it comes to, what our federal leaders are saying out there, and what kind of restrictions they're putting on us when it comes to public education and their work to siphon out funds from our public schools.
It's just crazy. But let's talk about your group. 7 years you guys have been doing this. Tell us, what started this? What was the spark 7 years ago that started the Badass Teachers Association?
So the spark 7 years ago was a Facebook post. It was a question in a parent group that were discussing fighting back against standardized testing. And somebody said, well, where's the space where educators can come together to talk about this? So Badass Teachers Association was born. Within the first week, I think we had like 17,000 members. So that's how much it exploded overnight. A lot to do with a post that Diane Ravitch wrote on her blog that brought everybody's attention towards us.
And, I remember, from the beginning, we had a number of teachers on, and we've had, just tons of people on over the years talking about standardized testing, talking about opting out of those tests, talking about all of the things that our kids face every day in the classroom. And now you guys are on the front of this reopening. What seems to be the consensus among educators at this moment? Because I know the politicos want to swing the doors open, get the teachers back in the front of the classroom, shove those kids back in there, and get back to normal. What are educators saying?
Educators do not feel safe going back into the classroom. And this is everybody pretty much across the country. I don't want to say everybody. There are some that are not necessarily feeling safe, but trust that their district will put in enough safety precautions, but that's the minority. The majority of opinion is that things are not going to be safe, that cases are going to cause schools to have to shut down soon. We listened to something from the National Educators Association that showed that the statistics within the first week of opening, it's a high probability that there will be 5 cases within a building. So states are pushing back. Educators are pushing back. Virginia has been having districts that have, through pushing of the educators, gone and said that they are starting out the year with distance learning, that they don't feel safe. They're going to concentrate on getting distance learning to a place where it's equitable, correct, first, and then also worry about reopening, but putting that distance learning piece in place.
Right. Now, you said this a second ago there'd be 5 cases in a building, I guess that's per school. I had said the other day, should we open up the schools? And, kind of snarkily said, this is an institution that can't handle a case of head lice. One kid in the classroom gets head lice, and then everybody's got it. This is much more contagious, I think, than head lice. And why would you want to send your kids back? So if you got 5 kids in a school building, what are they saying? What's the model saying that looks like in a week, 2 weeks, a month? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's scary how it can exponentially grow, right? We know that, we've seen it in states, and that's only from, normal everyday activities. Now you're talking about putting people within closed spaces. You're talking about a lot of interactions from person to person. You're talking about, and this is kind of what gets a lot of us, is the indoor ventilation system. And we are just beginning to realize how much this virus can be transmitted in closed areas through the ventilation system. So that's the biggest concern. And, are filters being changed correctly? Are the ventilation systems even in proper working condition right now? And we know, because schools have been so underfunded for so many years, that a lot of those repairs have gone by the wayside.
No, and that's the other part of this. During this pandemic, the schools are going to be taking a hit because state budgets are down. The federal government hasn't, as far as I know, given money to the states to help shore up those things. So that when we get back to something of normal, we know education is going to be one of the first things on the chopping block because it is such a big part of the budget.
Yes, it is. And it's a shame because the underfunding has affected us for decades, but a lot of the decision makers in legislative spaces, they don't prioritize education still, right, to this day. And that's something we had been working on over the past 7 years, was changing that viewpoint, but it still hasn't gotten it to the place where we need it to be in order to provide equitable schooling for students.
Yeah, maybe if we had, here's a thought. Maybe if we had spent a little bit more money on education all those years, we wouldn't have so many stupid people walking around.
That's an interesting thought. I think it also has to do a lot with restricting what the teachers are able to handle and cover in the classroom. The standards and the standardized testing really limits us to the conversations that we need to have.
Yeah, you don't have to agree with me on the stupid people thing, but it just seems odd to me that so many people, and I assume the people walking around without masks and saying this is all a hoax are the ones who failed science class. So we'll just go with that. But you talked a moment ago about distance learning, and I'll tell you, my kids hated it. They hated the couple of months that they had to do the video classrooms and all of that stuff. How are teachers going to adapt to it? Because look, this last time around, it was really just slapdash thrown together. How are teachers looking at that going into the fall? Because they didn't really know what to expect. It was new for them. What are you expecting? What are you hearing about the fall on the distance learning front?
Not enough discussions being had about that, and that's a major concern. All of the energy is being put into hybrid plans, having one group of students come in one day, another group another day, and then the physical space of schools, do we need to provide barriers around the desk? Do we cut the classes in half and only have the amount of desks in the classroom? Do we designate one-way hallways, right? That's where all of the energy is being spent, and nobody has been having this conversation about, okay, what are we going to do for the kids that are at home that are supposed to join for remote learning during those times? And then what are we doing for the kids who cannot come to school at all because they may be medically fragile? And then what are we going to do in the event that the school has to shut down? Nothing, barely at all, is being said about that.
Because this is another one of those moments, Melissa, where, the leadership, coming out of Washington, the leadership coming out of our states, they're losing valuable time to plan for what could happen. I'm not saying, we're going to have this massive outbreak, but a lot of people are. And, it's my belief always, you plan for the worst and you hope for the best, but you got to plan for the worst.
Yeah, you really do, definitely. And in this case, we don't even know what the worst is going to be, right? Because the virus, we don't have control of it yet. The virus has control of us at this point. We're just kind of along for the ride, especially as we watch, different states that had closed or partially closed and reopened, and numbers are going up. And there's only basically a handful. I think we're at 7 states right now that are in safe zones. That's scary. 7 out of 50 states where people are somewhat safer than the other ones.
And for how long? Because we're a mobile society, and for how long are those folks safe? It's scary stuff. But out of all this, and right at the very beginning, I had said that my fear would be that Education Incorporated, the big money folks, the cyber charter folks, would gain a massive leg up. Are you concerned that, as we continue into this, that a larger share of students end up in these cyber charters, and that's the way things go?
Yes, very scared, especially because of the DeVos agenda, right? We see her making proclamations saying that everybody has to return to in-person learning in the fall. So in states where cyber charters are a part of the education landscape, that's acceptable. So parents may choose to do that instead of returning students in person. And where it's already not in place, the federal funds that she also has been granting charters and they've been, getting as part of the relief funds is doing nothing but boostering that sector. So they have the ability to easily accommodate these students. And that's what she wanted all along, right?
Yeah.
She's pushing this to happen.
Yeah, the idea of never let a good crisis go to waste. And it's kind of what we're seeing. And the other thing that's frightening to me is with DeVos and with some of the decisions that have come down recently, that we end up seeing a lot more of these religious schools propping up who have parents who are of the mindset, that they're bathed in the blood of Jesus. They're immune from getting sick. And that we see a bunch of federal dollars going to these kind of schools, and we see a bunch of kids getting sick because of parents can't afford to not have child care, because we've done a horrible job at that. And again, we've done no planning on how we're going to handle any of that. It's just a lot of bad, isn't it?
It is, and you think also a lot of religious organizations don't necessarily believe in vaccines either. So once we do potentially get a vaccine, that's a whole other conversation of, you'll have a vaccinated school versus a non-vaccinated school. And if you don't want your child to get the vaccine, but the schools require it, well, that religious school is still open and is getting federal funding now, so why not send the student there?
Yeah, it's scary stuff. We have decided that we're not sending our kids back to school in the fall. What advice do you give parents? I know, just as an educator, what advice do you give your students' parents?
Number one advice I give is communicate with the educator. The educators have been standing by since March. The amazing work that was done with what we were handed in such a short time was awe-inspiring, right? So, and that was probably one of the biggest complaints from the educator side is, we want to help. I just need to know what's going on in the home. Let me know how I can help. So if you decide not to send your child to school, just communicate with the educator. If you are having scheduling problems and you need some, little bit of accommodations in what needs to be done on Zoom or, assistance with the homework, educators we're wired. We just want to help the students succeed. That's our number one goal. And communicating with parents and families is the best way to do that.
No, that's what we loved about our kids' teachers. They did a fantastic job given the circumstances they had here in the spring. And I know they'll continue into the fall if that has to be that way. But Melissa, I appreciate the time. Congratulations on the 7th anniversary birthday. Hopefully another 7 fighting for education and for kids. You guys do great work, and I look forward to having you guys back early and often.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Good stuff. Melissa Tomlinson, Executive Director of the Badass Teachers Association. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out their work. They do good stuff. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day 500,000 steelworkers walked off the job in a historic 116-day strike in defense of work rules. It was the largest industry-wide strike. It was also the last. The strike affected 12 steel companies and shut down more than 85% of steel production. Mill owners refused to grant wage increases unless the union agreed to changes in the contract. Specifically, they were looking to eliminate Section 2B, titled Local Working Conditions. The bosses wanted the ability to change the number of workers assigned to any given task. They also wanted to introduce new machinery and rules that would reduce labor hours and cut the workforce. United Steelworker members understood this as an assault on workplace safety and a move to break the union. Mill bosses hoped that a long strike would provoke the membership to abandon their union. But according to Jack Metzger, author of Striking Steel, members had grown used to walkouts every 3 years and planned accordingly. As well, the United Steelworkers had a well-oiled machinery, including an internal welfare system for hardship cases, and also reached out to merchants, banks, charitable agencies, and local and state governments to organize relief. By the end of August, the Department of Defense stoked anxieties that national security was at risk. 3 months into the strike, union funds dwindled and strikers felt the pinch. President Eisenhower invoked a Taft-Hartley injunction, hoping to force strikers back to work. As the union rose to challenge Taft-Hartley's constitutionality, solidarity among the mill owners crumbled. Kaiser Steel broke ranks and settled separately. Their contract granted wage increases and preserved Section 2B, which set the precedent for the contract that was eventually signed industry-wide.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some not so good news. Evidently, American Airlines has sent out their WARN Act letters to 25,000 employees saying that October 1st they could be laid off. Now, understand, they took a boatload of money from the CARES Act. I forget how much it was, like $25 billion or some huge amount. And they're not allowed to lay off anyone through the end of September. So October 1st could be the chopping date where 25,000 employees are just fired. Because look, I'll tell you myself, I'm not getting on a plane anytime soon, especially when you see all of these stories of people like Ted Cruz not wearing a mask on the plane. And I'm sure you've got a bunch of other COVIDiots out there doing the exact same thing. It's insane to me that there isn't a mandate that you have to wear a mask on the plane. It's insane to me because it is a confined space. It's insane to me that there isn't a mandate every other seat or partitions or something. It's kind of insane. But that just went out. The WARN Act letters. 25,000 people October 1st could lose their job. Got a couple emails I wanted to jump to. One of them, I just had to chuckle, and it goes back to what I was talking about with Melissa. There certainly are a lot of stupid people out there. Roger sent me an email claiming that Obama took hydroxychloroquine for COVID. He tagged the he tagged the tweet from radio host Mark Levin, who tweeted out, "You Trump-hating fools who dismiss his enthusiasm for hydroxychloroquine. Guess what? Obama takes it. So, ha!" And he had a picture of the bottle. And in the picture of the bottle, because I'm like, well, let me take a look at the picture of the bottle. The bottle actually had a date on it, July 8th, 2010. Only a decade ago. I'm kind of confused, Roger, how Obama was taking hydroxychloroquine for COVID 10 years ago. I know preventative care. I know it's a placebo, but I get it. It's a prophylactic. I know, but not even Obama was smart enough to realize that Trump would screw this up as bad as he has, and that we'd all be running for cover. What Obama took hydroxychloroquine for, and he did, the bottle was right there. The prescription was there for July 8th, 2010. And I guess you didn't bother to look into or see all of the bashing that Levin took over putting this out, because Obama actually used it for what it was for, making sure he doesn't get malaria when he travels to a country where malaria kills people. When you go to those countries, you're supposed to take this stuff 2 weeks before to help protect you. That's what he did. So I don't know where you got it. He was taking it for COVID, but there you go. So thanks, Roger. I appreciate it. Feel free to email again. It did give me a good laugh. Brian, he emailed me. He evidently wasn't happy with my position on the PPP money and who it went to. If you remember, I guess it was last week sometime, I talked about all of the groups that I didn't think should have gotten any money, like the Ayn Rand Institute, who doesn't believe in the federal government, or all these anti-LGBTQ outfits who could work from home, or all of this stuff that I went through. He wasn't, I guess, happy with my position. He seems to think, and he said that it has helped more small business than it's helped it's helped more small businesses than it's hurt. And I hope that's true. I hope giving them money didn't hurt them. But from the people that I see, they've struggled getting the money. And a lot of places, they didn't get it soon enough. So look, if your business got it, great, good for you, lucky. But a lot of people didn't. And I hear from people all the time who say, I'm still waiting on it. In fact, I talk to people who say they're still waiting on the unemployment that they didn't get backdated from months ago because the state is so far behind. He also went into saying that he didn't think the Obama years were all that great. And he's actually happy with Donald Trump and what Trump has done. He wrote, I think the public record of the last 3 years is irrefutable evidence of who made more efforts to improve the lives of common folk like myself. I actually have no idea what the hell that means. Because I can't think of a policy this administration has moved forward on that would make these folks' lives better. So Brian, if there's a specific thing that you want to cite, I would love to hear it. Then he went into he said, quote, just heard a few comments regarding Epstein and Trump while writing this. Let's try to be even-handed with reporting, he says. Bill Clinton was a documented passenger over 20 times on his plane traveling to his Isle of Sex, correct? Yes. Maybe you can cover this too the next time the topic comes up. Donald Trump is now president. We now have a guy in the White House at this moment who was palling around with a known pedophile. Bill Clinton also hanging around with Epstein. If it's proven that Bill Clinton was fiddling around with little girls, lock him up. That's simple. You're not going to get a defense out of me for someone doing this. Alan Dershowitz, Bill Clinton, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it was Jesus Christ himself. At the end of it, if this is what you were doing, you go to jail. There's no, for me, it's not, but what? There's no what, oh no, well, both sides. No, if you did it, you're wrong, you go to jail, period. And I've always taken that position. In fact, I've always been harder on Democrats because I'm not a Bill Clinton fan. I never really have been. So to throw Clinton out after all these years to justify what Trump is doing doesn't hold any water for me. And I would suggest next time, here's a thought, next time make a better argument. But like I said, I hope wherever you work, I hope they got the PP money. I hope it works. I hope it helps. And I would love to hear what it is that you think is irrefutable evidence that people's lives are better because of Donald Trump. By all means. And I will talk about that. So there you go. But thanks so much. If you want to send me an email, you can send it rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Eventually. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on the day's news. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
We've got a lot of heat and humidity to talk about.
Extended extreme heat wave spreads across U.S. June 2020, second hottest June ever recorded. Bankrupt oil and gas companies leave taxpayers with the cleanup bill. Plus,
Donald Trump ignored expert warnings about coronavirus. On climate, he won't listen to scientists or the military.
Environmental group hits Trump on COVID and climate denial.
All of that catastrophic denial and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's time to talk about Donald John Trump.
Are you okay, Congressman? Are you all right?
Yep.
Okay. You sure?
Okay.
Okay. Gosh, Congressman Glenn Grothman, maybe you shouldn't have gone to that Republican in-person state convention in Wisconsin. Hope you ain't got the COVID. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it's not only hot out there, it's record hot out there.
Oh, yes, indeed it is. First up, June 2020 was the second hottest June ever recorded globally, second only to June 2016. That's according to new data from both NASA and NOAA. And the last 12 months are now tied for the warmest 12-month period since record-keeping began in the mid-1800s. That is according to the European Union's climate monitoring service, Copernicus. 2020 so far is already on track to be the second warmest year ever recorded and has brought scorching new records in both the Arctic and the Antarctic. And just note that this record warmth is happening in the absence of an El Nino weather pattern in the Pacific Ocean that normally boosts global temperatures.
Was there an El Nino back in 2016, the record year?
Yes, it was a super El Nino.
And now we're hitting these records without any help.
Yep. An extreme heat wave is also baking the southern half of the nation. The National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warnings and heat advisories this week, covering 50 million Americans from Southern California to Florida. Death Valley, California, hit a searing 128 degrees Fahrenheit on Sunday. That is just 1 degree shy of the hottest temperature ever recorded on the entire planet, which was just 2 years ago in Pakistan. While intense heat waves of this magnitude are not unheard of in summer, climate scientists warn that they will become increasingly more frequent in the years ahead due to man-made climate change. Meteorologists warn that this heat wave could last multiple weeks in some regions.
Great.
Prolonged exposure to the heat increases the odds of heat-related deaths, so officials around the country are trying to safely open cooling centers in affected states, even as the coronavirus pandemic surges across the country.
Yeah, how are we supposed to have cooling centers where everybody comes into a room together to cool down?
That's what they're trying to figure out.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
In other news, remember when oil prices for U.S. crude briefly crashed below zero back in April?
So low that they were actually paying people to take the oil off their hands.
Yep, now it is July, and the benchmark price for crude is still hovering around $40 a barrel due to lack of demand, and that is still beneath the break-even price for many in the fracking industry in the United States. The New York Times reports that the drilling and fracking industry is now facing a wave of bankruptcies and are abandoning unprofitable wells, leaving behind potential environmental disasters for U.S. taxpayers to pay the cleanup bill, even as CEOs walk off with million-dollar bonuses.
Once again, privatizing the profits, socializing the losses.
Yep, just one example in the New York Times. Bankrupt Texas oil producer MDC Energy's abandoned wells are leaking climate-warming methane. It would require an estimated $40 million to clean up and shutter those wells, but the company's debts exceed the value of its assets by more than $180 million.
So they're out of business. They're not going to clean it up. We're going to clean it up.
Right, but the company did find the money to pay its CEO more than $8 million in fees.
Oh, good. At least that happened.
In politics, venerable nonprofit environmental group the League of Conservation Voters has launched a multi-million-dollar ad campaign in 6 swing states, slamming Donald Trump's anti-science attacks on the environment and public health.
For months, Donald Trump ignored warnings from public health experts about the coronavirus pandemic, and his denial turned deadly. He refuses to listen to NASA, scientists, and the military about climate change and its damage to our homes, environment, and national security.
A lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. It's a hoax.
Well, I'm glad they've turned that into an ad. We've been saying that here for weeks, that his denial of COVID and the Republicans' denial of COVID is really exactly like that for climate change, just compressed into a few months instead of, at this point, several decades.
Yep.
It's appalling and, yes, deadly. For much more on all of these reports and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
remember Dr. Ronnie Jackson? Remember him? He was Trump's personal physician. He was the White House doctor. And I think they actually had him put up for Secretary of Veterans Affairs, wasn't it? Something like that. Evidently, he's made news as as you would expect, a Trumpite making news because he has said that wearing a mask is a personal choice. He says, I don't particularly want my government telling me that I have to wear a mask. And so I think that it's a choice I can make. This is a doctor. This is a guy who you would think smarter. But I guess, you can't be a Trump thumping Republican and take the mask side. Very, very strange. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the big news of the day, I've asked our good friend Bob Ney to come back and talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So what do you think? Ronnie Jackson says, hey, it's a personal choice.
Well, no, I didn't. I expected this to happen because Dr. Ronnie Jackson has won the runoff campaign for Congress in which state? Can I hear it? Texas? Texas?
Yep.
So that was definitely a mask mantra cry for a campaign. Didn't matter about the medical proof.
Yeah.
That's Texas.
Seriously? I mean, seriously?
That's what I think he did.
No,
He's a physician.
I absolutely agree with you.
Yep.
But you go, is that how little they think of their voters?
Well, maybe in that district, I guess it played. I mean, I was thinking today, this doesn't become our state's about to mandate masks, and today Kroger, Home Depot, and I think it was Walmart are mandating masks on Monday, and so it shouldn't boil down to a blue or a red congressional district. But when I read the article about Ronnie Jackson, I thought, okay, he got through the primary, and I guess it didn't matter that he's a physician.
Yeah, moron.
Doesn't matter.
Weird.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I mean, I've been to Home Depot a couple of times because we're building a big, beautiful wall in my backyard.
Saw that.
And
you're making your neighbor pay, right?
We're gonna try, most certainly.
Okay, there you go.
And we're gonna get him on the air here, and we're gonna try and do that. But no, it's I've been to Home Depot a couple of times, and right when you walk in the door, there's a sign that says masks are required. And when you walk by the person who's standing there, you get a couple of feet, and you see immediately people pulling them off, and it's I don't get it. How difficult is it while you're in that environment? Just keep the damn thing out, go back to your car, take it off, and go along your day.
Right. Just keep going with it, and it's going to be like. See, our Home Depot has not required it until this Monday. We haven't, but Menards has always required it for the last 2 months. They've required it here.
Yeah, ours
each
has
state, you know how it is. Each state has its own little mismatch of laws and rules, that are different than the others.
Well, yeah, here in Pennsylvania, our governor, there's been a mask mandate in place for a while. It's just there's no enforcement mechanism. So it's like, what's the point of having the mandate if there's no enforcement? If you're not going to fine anyone, and look, I live in an area where the sheriff said, early on, he's not enforcing any of Wolf's orders on the closures or anything. So how do you enforce something when you have part of the law enforcement mechanism saying they're not going to do it?
Right. I think probably if you want to go somewhere and they refuse to seat you or let you enter, is the only way it's going to be enforced, because a lot of places they will not enforce it. And of course, with a lot of law enforcement too, some of them in certain areas don't have the time to be able to go do it. And this is the weirdest part. Nobody talks about this. Nobody. If you have a certain crime you're committing or a certain thing you're doing that could be potential crime, some of the jurisdictions are telling the police, do not arrest them. We can't take them. We can't book them. We can't issue citations. Now, I'm just talking about Ohio.
Right.
Some of that has happened, and it's frustrating, a lot of people. But outright, some of the sheriffs and things have said, we're just not going to enforce it, period. Or churches.
Yeah, where did I see that? There was a guy from somewhere, near Cincinnati who was on TV, and he said, we just stopped giving people tickets.
Right. Mm-hmm, sure.
I'm like, wow, I guess speeding is not legal there. Why not?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's just such a weird time. I mean, as I started today off with, I'm going, how hard is it to be a grown up? If we don't act like adults and if we don't do the right thing, we're going to get sent back to our room again.
Right. Well, I have a friend of mine. He's an attorney, and he said that there was this guy, and he threatened to kill these two women, and the judge just said, well, we're not going to lock him up, put him on his own recognizance because of the COVID virus. And I was like, okay, wow.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let that get out.
No.
That's not a good thing.
Exactly.
Let's move along. Some good news coming out of the UK. I see that they have banned, and I never say this company's name right, Hawaii or...
Huawei.
Is that what it is?
I had to practice it, trust me.
But the UK has banned them and their 5G network, which I think we've got to do. I think the 5G stuff scares me because, as it was explained to me, the 5G internet is how things are going to talk to each other. So when we go to automated cars, when computers are interfacing, when all that stuff happens, not just you texting me or calling me on the cell phone, but when all this machinery and all these things are communicating with each other, I don't think I'm thrilled with a company with massive ties to the communist China government. I don't think I'm thrilled with them having that access.
Right. The Trump administration's been all over, creating this like firewall with Huawei, to keep them from being part of integration of the world. And the place that was most vulnerable is Europe because they were using them. And now this is a big deal. I mean, when the UK comes out and says, no, we're not going to let China be part of it, that is a real big deal. Now, I don't know if the rest of Europe will do it, but China's had their hands into Europe. And, espionage these days around the world, it's not done by the old CIA. You get in to know the premier secretary and, you get in to know staff people. It's done today with chips and things that are the size of human hairs that you stick in components in places and satellites that go up in the air. This is what it's about. And what better for the Chinese to be able to do than to go into a 5G network?
Yeah, and to have the control of it. I mean, that we voluntarily give them all of our access. It was always concerning to me that, years ago, I don't know, I think it was Kaspersky Labs or something like this.
Right.
They were selling internet protection, but they're a Russian company. And it was one of those things where, I was going, do I really want to, open myself up to a Russian company? Whether they have ties to the Russian government or not, do I really want to do that?
But, then too, Rick, we're having this conversation. Ironically, 3 hours ago, there's the old Radio Shack. There's this Radio Shack device that this person has, and they're able to click up and read, talk about HIPAA law, medical information on people admitted to hospitals, whether they were admitted because of the virus or whatever, and they're able to do it as long as you promise not to use the information. And I'm sitting there today going, you've got to be kidding me. And they said, no. And they showed me. And I'm like, what on earth are we doing? I mean, how vulnerable are we if somebody can walk down and get a little electronic part for $40 and start to read people's medical records?
Well, the good thing is there are no more Radio Shacks left, so you can't just walk down and get
that's
one.
true. No more radio, right. You have to go to Wally World.
Yeah, no, you have to order on Amazon, or you have to get it shipped from China, which is, again, scary stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the more we go into this digital world and the more we move towards cryptocurrency and, look, I fear out of this pandemic, cash is a thing of the past. Once we get into that kind of a electronic world, internet theft is going to be just through the roof. Not that it's not now, but it's going to be exponentially worse.
Well, it is, and Trump signed this 2018 order, which has given carte blanche to the CIA to go after several countries, including Russia. Now, people will instantly say, well, good for him doing that. Well, this goes a little bit different direction. CIA can sit there without anybody telling them or approving or anything and just say, let's just go into all the banks that we can get into. And then, of course, we will be retaliated ourselves, and bank accounts will be hacked, all over the United States. And this is all going on. I mean, nobody's paying attention to it, but you're right. It's just going on at all levels. And I think it's terrifying.
No, it is. As we get into this kind of a world, It is terrifying because this is the battlefront. I mean, it is cyber warfare. And, the Russians have been hacking into us, the Iranians, North Korea, China, they've all been hacking, and obviously we're probably hacking into them as well. But it's this weird kind of, this really unstable kind of environment.
Well, sure is. Way back in the 2000, in the U.S. House, I oversaw the technology with Steny Hoyer of the House. And I would get notices every morning from our technicians that said, last night China tried to hack the congressional computers, Iran tried to hack the congressional computers. No Russia at that time, but those two countries. And we would actually officially talk to the embassies, and they would say, those are teenagers. Those are teenagers doing that. And that was back in 2000. We kept having to build better systems. What about banks? I mean, do they really build the better systems? We had government ability, And I just think it's a matter of time before this just goes crazy.
Yeah, not good, not good at all. And look, today I'm sure you saw it that Biden's Twitter account, Obama's Twitter account, Elon Musk's, a bunch of people's Twitter account was hacked, and Bill Gates, and they put out like a request for some cryptocurrency donation, but again, it just shows just how vulnerable. Everything, all this stuff is, and look, I have people who advise me on how we keep our stuff safe with password changes and all that craziness, and you can never be vigilant enough. I mean, I got to imagine all those people weren't using ABC and 123 as their password.
And you're right. The point about the cashless society. I mean, my son-in-law got hit just a month ago at a regular store where he bought a can of pop, and next thing you know, $1,000 was gone from his account because somebody had stuck a fake thing in there, and the store didn't even know it. The word reads, I guess, or something. I don't know how it works. But you look at this, and now the cashless society. When I went in the bank yesterday, the lady whose supervisor happened to be there, and I think I freaked her out, and she said something about, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're going to be cashless. And she looked at me, and I said, oh, you don't know, you're not part of the conspiracy yet? She kind of laughed, and I said, the mint makes coins, and they're robotic. There's not humans standing there making coins.
Right.
I said, why are we in a shortage? She just looked at me. I said, because the government wants it cashless. Then they can monitor every single thing you do, which in itself, one would say, well, maybe they need to for security, quote, quote. But the end result is that makes all of us hackable, period, all day long.
Yep. And you can within the blink of an eye lose everything you own.
Well, sure. Somebody wants to come, mow your lawn, and the next thing you know, you can't. There won't be cash to give them. Everybody's going to be part of a system that can be absolutely hacked.
Yeah, and there are some who say, well, that's a good thing because then we could tax them. Because I've got friends who, they live on the underground economy. They cut grass, they fix things. They get paid, a reasonable amount, not enough that you're going to go, oh my God, you're cheating the government out of their valuable resource, but they're eking by. That's over.
Right. Well, that's gone. You're right.
Scary, just scary times. But like I said, the weird thing is all those people got hacked today. Just shows you that even that isn't foolproof. I want to get your thoughts on Biden's $2 trillion climate plan. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I'm curious your thoughts.
I think it's okay. I think that left to his own ability right now to devise a climate plan, this would not have been his ideal plan. But the fact remains, he also has to make happy kind of the AOC, side of the Democratic Party, right? And I think that's what this does, although it's not, something that's so bad. I think he took some middle ground on it. And the proof's in the pudding. I mean, if he's elected president, then, let's see what you can do and what you can pass or not. But I thought it was okay. It wasn't something that was picked apart as, trying to undo the world when, AOC announced, her plan originally.
Right.
And I refer back to her because she's kind of known as the climate person.
I like the fact that they took a lot of what Inslee had to say, the governor of Washington, and to me he was, to be honest, he was my third choice for president. 2 spots obviously ahead of Joe Biden because Biden was my 5th. But because of this climate plan and because of the commitment to labor, and the commitment to actually creating jobs and American jobs and bringing some manufacturing back, and all the things that we've talked about over the years that I think are so important.
Right, and I think it's balanced, and I think you're right. Inslee, had decent ideas. So I think what Biden did was good. He didn't go so far with it that people could come out on the Trump side and say, "Oh, there go, there's all your jobs, they're gone." He's got a balance, the new and what I call, the existing, the old. I think he had a balance.
Yeah, but none of it's going to matter if they don't win the Senate.
Correct. That's right.
It's not going to matter. Nothing gets done if Mitch McConnell controls the Senate. And last night, you had Jeff Sessions, now officially the elf on the shelf, because he lost the primary to Tuberville. I guess Tommy Tuberville is his name.
Right. With the former coach of Auburn, who wins in Alabama. I thought about Sessions, and I had said this earlier today. I mean, he was the most beat up cabinet member by his own president, I think, in the history of modern America. I mean, it was a weekly punching bag Trump went after him. Weekly.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like it.
And I wasn't surprised that he came out going after him. But the thing that I found hysterical was that as Trump was talking up Tuberville, he kept invoking the name Lou Saban, and Lou Saban's been dead for about 10 years.
Right.
When he met Nick Saban. I think we all know that.
Right.
But had Joe Biden said that, boy, they'd have been going crazy about it. He's mentally deficient, and he can't pass the test.
Dementia. Right.
Just
well, they're both going to have a lot of gaffes. That is a known factor for this fall. Okay, it's going to happen.
Is there going to be a debate, you think?
Yeah, I think there'll be 3. Friends of mine say, okay, Biden has to say no debate, absolutely not till you throw your taxes out there.
That's not going to happen.
And he can't do that. If he goes down that rabbit hole, then they're going to pursue him. You don't want to debate. You're afraid to debate.
Yep.
And like anything, I think no matter what Trump has done or not done, or no matter his demeanor, or no matter how nasty we know he's going to get, you got to debate. I would think there's got to be 3 debates, and Biden, just has to be deciding his, approach with it. What's he going to do when Trump goes crazy on him?
Yeah.
And they've got to think about that. They've got to plan it out, and they have to have some type of mantra where they come back, swiping a little bit, or maybe making fun of him.
Yeah, those. I'm hoping there are some debates. I'd love to see a bunch of them because I think they'll be fun. I think they'll be entertaining.
A lot.
And I'm sure there'll be a lot of money made on the over and under on the gaffes.
Right.
Last thing I got for you. Did you see Ivanka Trump's big rollout plan yesterday on the try something new or find something new or be something new? The jobs plan that they came out with, or whatever they want to call it?
No, I did not. What's in it?
Oh, well, it's a website and a rah PR campaign for if you're laid off, you just don't sit home like a lazy bum. Go out there and do something different.
Oh, I saw that. She was telling Americans out of work to find something new to do.
Yes.
Oh no, I did see that. I thought I see what you're saying. She rolled that out. Yes, find something new to do and find a new career. That always made me, when I read this, it made me remember when they would be passing the trade bills, and Congressman Dreyer from California, I would argue with him all the time, and then he would say, well, we're putting TRA in there, trade readjustment. And I said, well, if this doesn't cost jobs, why do you need TRA? And how are they supposed to go look for a new job when you've taken theirs away? This reminds me of the same thing. The job's gone. How do you make a new career in something that isn't going to pan out anyway right now with the way things are going here and the unsteady nature of the economy and the fact we can't get through this virus to make sure the economy rolls? Yeah, I did see that.
And as I said yesterday, at least they did put the trade adjustment assistance in those trade bills because they knew you were going to lose jobs. And you had a little bit of money to do something. This does none of that. This is just feel good. Oh, hey,
Right.
go try something new. A little pep rally.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I used to support the TRA because it's better than nothing. I just hated the trade bills, But it's sort of like the same kind of theory in a sense that she's saying, well, this is her form of a TRA. Hey, try something new.
Yeah.
There you go. We've kind of shut everything else down, but you try something new. And I thought it was one of the most undefined campaigns that I've seen lately. I'm surprised they came out with that.
Yeah,
I really am.
I wish somebody would smack all of them.
It would be better to not come out with anything than to come out with that. That's like telling somebody that has no hopes of a job right now due to everything going on that, well, why don't you just try to be a YouTube channel guy or gal and see how that works.
Yeah, get a YouTube channel and beg people for pennies.
Sure.
Crazy. But, Bob, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, good stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that Ralph Gray was attacked for trying to organize black farmers. Gray was born to a large African-American family in Alabama. Living in the Jim Crow South, he became a tenant farmer. He joined the Communist Party. At the time, communist labor organizers were often more open to black membership and leadership than were other white-dominated labor organizations. Along with his brother Tommy, Ralph helped to found the Croppers and Farm Workers Union in Tallapoosa County, Alabama. They set to work organizing black sharecroppers. Then, several of the local landlords stopped providing food and money to their workers. They did this in an effort to force the black workers to labor on building a new sawmill. Angry sharecroppers joined the new union in protest. The union demanded more autonomy for the tenant farmers. They also demanded a longer school day and a public school bus for their children. Alarmed by this organizing, the sheriff, Kyle Young, led a posse to break up a union meeting. They beat and terrorized the union members. The vigilantes then went to Tommy Gray's house, where they fractured his wife's skull. Ralph Gray chased them off with a shotgun. But the next night, on July 16th, the union met again. Gray and others armed themselves to protect the meeting. Gunfire was exchanged. The sheriff shot Ralph Gray while he lay on the ground, already wounded. The mob of vigilantes then burned Gray's house to the ground. They placed Gray's mutilated corpse on the courthouse steps as a warning to any others who dare to stand up for the rights of black workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news for United Healthcare, the nation's largest health insurer. They have more than doubled their second quarter profits. Thank you, COVID-19. Evidently, the report goes like this. Everyone was staying home. Nobody went and had the elective procedures. And like I told my wife, I had my hip replacement done at the right time, right? End of January, beginning of February, right at the right time, because had I had to wait, another month or two, probably still be waiting. And this is how they've made a little bit of money. Now, here's what my thought is. So they've made pretty good chunk of money. Evidently, they earned the 3-month window that ended on June 30th. They earned about $6.6 billion. Their adjusted earnings were about $7.12 a share. They easily beat the expectations. They're going to pocket a bunch of money. My question is, as everyone runs and goes and gets the elective procedures that they need, and we set up the assembly line, like I saw at my dentist's office, because boy, they were just banging them out, and the costs go up, are we going to have to bail them out? Because they're going to claim, oh, we lost a bunch of money? Is that coming next? I kind of think it is. But this, again, is another reason why I think we need to have a single-payer health insurance system, one single company, one single entity, pay all the bills. And in these moments, if we hold on to it, at least you get to hold on to the savings. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, you can download the podcast there at the website, or you can get the app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick